Section 8 of The Travels of Ibn Battuta. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lewis Fletcher. The Travels of Ibn Battuta, translated by Samuel Lee. Chapter 19. Description of the Maldive Islands. Natural productions, people, customs, trade, currency, origin of Mohammedanism here, a queen governing the principal island. They write generally on palm leaves with an iron style. Power of the judge, his revenue. Isle of Kalnus. Voyage to the principal isle. Introduced to the husband and vizier of the queen. Food of the islanders. Takes the office of judge. Marries 3 wives. Suspected by the vizier. Divorces his wives and visits the other islands. Muluk Island. Its fertility. Distance from the coast of Coromandel. These islands constitute one of the wonders of the world, for their number is about 2,000, nearly 100 of which are so close to each other as to form a sort of ring, each of which, nevertheless, is surrounded by the sea. When vessels approach any one of them, they are obliged to show who they have on board. If not, a passage is not permitted between them, for such is their proximity to each other, that the people of one are recognized by those of another. The greatest trees on the island are those of the coconut, the fruit of which they eat with fish. Of this sort of trees, the palm will produce fruit 12 times in the year, each month supplying a fresh crop, so that you will see upon the trees the fruit of some large, of others small, of others dry, and of others green. And this is the case always. From these they make palm wine and oil olive, and from their honey sweetmeats, which they eat with the dried fruits. This is a strong incentive to venery. I had some slave girls and 4 wives during my residence here. The people are religious, chaste, and peaceable. They eat what is lawful, and their prayers are answered. Their bodies are weak. They make no war, and their weapons are prayers. They are by no means terrified at the robbers and thieves of India, nor do they punish them, from the experience that everyone who steals will be exposed to some sudden and grievous calamity. When any of the war vessels of the infidel Hindus pass by these islands, they take whatsoever they find without being resisted by anyone. But if one of these infidels should take for himself surreptitiously but a single lemon, his chief will not only severely punish him, but will impress most seriously upon his mind the fear of some horrible consequence to follow. Excepting this one case only, they are the most gentle people possible towards those who visit them. The reason probably is the delicacy of their persons and their ignorance of the art of war. In each of these islands are several mosques, which, with the rest of their buildings, are constructed of wood. They are a cleanly people, each individual washing himself twice daily, on account of the great heat of the sun. They very much use perfumes, such as the gallia and scented oils. Every woman must, as soon as her husband has arisen and said his prayers, bring him the box of collyrium for his eyes, with the perfumes, and with these he anoints and perfumes himself. Both the rich and poor walk barefoot. The whole country is shaded with trees, so that a person walking along is just as if he were walking in a garden. The water of their wells is not more than 2 cubits from the surface of the earth. Whenever a traveller enters these islands, he may marry for a very small dowry one of the handsomest women for any specific period, upon this condition, that he shall divorce her when he leaves the place, because the women never leave their respective districts. But if he does not wish to marry, the woman in whose house he lodges will cook for him, and otherwise attend on him, for a very small consideration. The greatest part of their trade consists in a sort of hemp, that is, thread made of the fibres of the coconut. It is made by macerating the nut in water, then by beating it with large mallets till it is quite soft. They then spin it out, and afterwards twist it into ropes. With this thread the ships of India and Yemen are sewn together, of which, when they happen to strike against a rock, the thread will yield a little, but will not soon break, contrary to what happens when put together with iron nails. This is the best sort of hemp. Each population catches the fish of its own island only, which they salt and send to India and China. The currency used instead of coin is the wada. This is sea shellfish, which they take up on the shore and then bury in the earth till the flesh is entirely wasted away, the hard part still remaining. This is the wada which is so abundant in India. It is carried from these islands to the province of Bengal, and there also passes instead of coin. The women of the islands of India cover their faces and also their bodies from the navel downwards. This they all do, even to the wives of their kings. When I held the office of judge among them, I was quite unable to get them covered entirely. In these islands the women never eat with the men, but in their own society only. I endeavoured, while I was judge, to get my wives to eat with me, but I could never prevail. Their conversation is very pleasing, and they themselves are exceedingly beautiful. The cause of these islands becoming Mohammedan was, as it is generally received among them, and as some learned and respectable persons among them informed me, as follows. When they were in a state of infidelity, there appeared to them every month a spectre from among the genii. This came from the sea. Its appearance was that of a ship filled with candles. When they saw him, it was their custom to take and dress up a young woman who was a virgin, and place her in the idol temple which stood on the seashore, and had windows looking towards him. Here they left her for the night. When they came in the morning, they found her vitiated and dead. This they continued doing month after month, casting lots among themselves, and each, to whom the lot fell, giving up and dressing out his daughter for the spectre. Came to them a Western Arab named Abul Barakat the Berber. This was a holy man, and one who had committed the Quran to memory. He happened to lodge in the house of an old woman in the island of Mal. One day, when he entered the house, he saw her with a company of her female inmates weeping and lamenting, and asked them what was the matter. A person who acted as an interpreter between him and them said that the lot had fallen on this old woman, who was now adorning her daughter for the spectre. For this it was that she was crying. This too was her only child. The Moghrabin, who was a beardless man, said to her, I will go to the spectre tonight instead of thy daughter. If he takes me, then I shall redeem her. But if I come off safe, then that will be to the praise of God. They carried him accordingly to the idol house that night, as if he had been the daughter of the old woman, the magistrate knowing nothing whatever of the matter. The Moghrabin entered, and sitting down in the window, began to read the Quran. By and by the spectre came, with eyes flaming like fire, but when he got near enough to hear the Quran, he plunged into the sea. In this manner the Moghrabin remained until morning, reading the Quran, when the old woman came with her household and the great personages of the district, in order to fetch out the young woman and burn her, as it was their custom. But when they saw the old man reading the Quran just as they had left him, they were greatly astonished. The old woman then told them what she had done, and why she had desired him to do this. They then carried the Moghrabin to their king, whose name was Shanwan, and told him the whole of the affair, and he was much astonished at the Arab. Upon this the Moghrabin presented the doctrine of Islamism to the king, and pressed him to receive it, who replied, Stay with us another month, and then, if you will do as you now have done and escape from the spectre with safety, I will become a Mohammedan. So God opened the heart of the king for the reception of Islamism before the completion of the month, of himself, of his household, his children, and his nobles. When, however, the second month came, they went with the Moghrabin to the idol house, according to the former custom, the king himself also being present. And when the following morning had arrived, they found the Moghrabin sitting and reading his Quran, having had the same rencontre with the spectre that he had on the former occasion. They then broke the images, razed the idol house to the ground, and all became Mohammedans. The sect into which they entered was that of the Moghrabin, namely that of Ibn Malik. Till this very day they make much of the Moghrabins on account of this man. I was residing for some time in these islands without having any knowledge of this circumstance. Upon a certain night, however, when I saw them exalting and praising God as they were proceeding towards the sea, with Qurans on their heads, I asked them what they were about, when they told me of the spectre. They then said, Look towards the sea, and you will see him. I looked, and behold, he resembled a ship filled with candles and torches. This, said they, is the spectre, which, when we do as you have seen us doing, goes away and does us no injury. When I first came to the island of Mal, a woman was sovereign, because the king mentioned above had left no male issue. The inhabitants therefore gave to his eldest daughter, Khadijah, the supreme rule. Her husband, Jamal Odin, the preacher, then became her prime minister. It is a custom with them to write out copies of the Quran and other books on paper only. Decisions they inscribe on palm leaves, sharp-pointed instrument somewhat like a knife. The army of this princess consists of foreigners to the number of about 1,000 men. Their laws mostly originate with the judge, who, for the authority with which his orders are obeyed, is more like a king. He enjoys, by right of his office, the revenue of 3 islands, a custom which originated with their king Shanwaza, whose proper name was Ahmed, and this still remains in force. When I first arrived at these islands, the ship in which I was put into port in the island Kalnus, which is a beautiful place containing several mosques. Upon this occasion, some of the learned and pious inhabitants took me to their houses and entertained me with great hospitality. The commander of the ship in which I had been then went with me to the island in which the Queen resided, and after which the other islands of these parts are named. I sailed with him in order to see her, and after passing by many of the islands, came to it. Our practice was to sail in a large boat during the morning. About the middle of the day we said our prayers, and then dined in the boat. And thus, after 10 days, we came to the island Zabia el Mol, i.e. the Maldive island. In this I landed, and a report was made to the Queen's vizier, Jamal Odin, who was also her husband. Upon this he sent for me. I went to him, and was very honourably received and entertained. He also appointed a house for my residence, sent me a present of victuals, fruits, clothing, and an alms gift of the wada, or shells, which are the currency of these parts, and used instead of coin. The food of the greater part of the inhabitants of these parts is rice, which they cook and lay up in saucers and small potted plates, with spiced flesh, fowl, and fish. Upon this, in order to assist digestion, they drink el kerbani, that is, the honey of the coconut made into spiced wine. This easily digests, excites the appetite, and communicates strength to the frame. After this, the vizier desired me to take the office of judge, and to remain among them. He gave me a house and a large garden, in which were built many other houses. He also sent me a carpet, vessels, a dress of honour, and made me ride upon a horse, although it is custom with them that none except the vizier should thus ride. The rest of the nobles and others either ride in a palanquin, a machine formerly described, or walk on foot. He also sent female slaves for my service, and I married 3 wives. The vizier also frequently came himself, and God reward him. When, however, I had married my wives, and my relations became, through them, numerous and powerful in the island, the vizier began to be afraid of me, lest I should get the upper hand of him, when no such thought had entered my mind. This resulted purely from their weakness, the fewness of their troops, and their inexperience in the art of war, as already noticed. He hated me mortally in his own mind, began to inquire into my affairs and to watch my proceedings. This was all known to me, and it became my intention to leave the place, but this was also a matter of dread with him, because I might then possibly bring an army upon him from the Malabar districts of Hindustan. The king of those parts, Gyath Odin, having married a sister to one of my wives when I resided in Delhi, and with whom I was on terms of friendship. I then divorced all my wives except one who had a young child, and I left that island for those which stretch out before it. These form numerous groups, each group containing many islands. In some of these I saw women who had only one breast, which much astonished me. Of these islands, one is named Muluk. In this, large ships destined for the districts of Malabar put into harbour. It is an island exceedingly rich in vegetation and soil, so that when you cut a branch from any of its trees and plant it either on the road or on a wall, it will grow, throw out leaves, and become a tree. In this island I saw a pomegranate tree, the fruit of which ceased not to shoot during the whole year. Between the Maldive Islands and the Malabar districts there is a distance of 3 days with a moderate wind. End of Section 8. Recording by Lewis Fletcher. Section 9 of The Travels of Ibn Battuta, translated by Samuel Lee. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lewis Fletcher. Chapter 20. Arrival in Ceylon. Visits the king at Batuta. Natural productions. Pearls. Obtains permission to visit Adam's Peak. Arrives at Manar Mandali. Port of Salawat. Kanha, the capital of Ceylon, described. Mosque of the Sheikh Othman. The Emperor Kinur. His white elephant. Large rubies found all over Ceylon. Description of the cave Easter Mahmud. Batuta. Monkeys. Estuary of reeds. Old woman's house. Cave of Baba Tahir. Of Sibak. The fierce leech. The seven caves. Ridge of Alexander. Description of Adam's Peak. Customs of pilgrims. Fishport. Village of Karkun. Of Dildinu. Of at Kalanja. City of Dinor. Great idol temple with Brahmins, yogis and daughters of the nobility. Kali. Kalumbu. Batala. When we sailed, however, the wind changed upon us, and we were near being lost, but arrived at last at the island of Ceylon, a place well known, and in which is situated the mountain of Serendib. This appeared to us like a pillar of smoke when we were at a distance of 9 days from it. When we got near the land, we saw a harbour, into which we endeavoured to put, but were threatened by the Rais, who was in a ship. The reason of this was, the harbour was in a district belonging to an infidel prince, who had no intercourse with the captains of Mohammedan vessels, as other infidel princes had. He was likewise a very stupid being. He had also ships with which he occasionally transported his troops against the Mohammedans. Beside all this, we were in danger of drowning unless we could enter the port. I said to the Rais, therefore, "Allow me to come on shore, and I will ensure thy safety, and that of those about thee, with the king." To this he consented, and myself, with some of my followers only, were brought on shore. The infidels then came about us and said, "What are you?" I answered, "I am a relation of the king of the Malabar districts, and am on a voyage to visit him. Whatever is in the ship is a..." They then went to their king and told him this. He therefore sent for me, and I went to him. He is king of the city of Batala, which is small, and surrounded by 2 wooden fences. The whole of its shore abounds with cinnamon wood, bakam, and the kalanji aloe, which, however, is not equal to the kamari. The merchants of Malabar and the Malabar districts transport it without any other price than a few articles of clothing, which are given as presents to the king. This may be attributed to the circumstance that it is brought down by the mountain torrents, and left in great heaps upon the shore. Between this city and the Malabar districts there is a voyage of 1 day and night. The king of Ceylon, Ayari Shakarti by name, has considerable forces by sea. When I was first admitted to his presence, he rose and received me honourably, and said, "You are to be my guest for 3 days. Security shall be forwarded to the people of the ship, because your relation, the king of the Malabar, is my friend." After thanking him, I remained with him and was treated with increasing respect. One day, when I was admitted to his presence, he had with him a great number of pearls, which had been brought from the pearl fishery, and these his companions were sorting. He asked me whether I had ever seen pearl diving in any country which I had visited. I said yes, I had, in the island of Finas. He said, "Do not be shy, ask for what you wish." I answered, "My only desire in coming to this island was to visit the blessed foot of our forefather Adam, whom these people call Baba, while they style Eve Mama." "This," replied he, "is easy enough. We will send someone with you who shall conduct you thither. The ship," said I, "which brought me here, shall return to the Malabar, and when I return, you shall send me there in one of your ships." He answered, "It shall be so." When I told this to the commander of the ship, he refused to accede to it, and said, "I will wait for you should you be absent a whole year." This I told to the king, who said, "He may stay at my charge until you return." He then gave me a palanquin, which his servants carried upon their shoulders. He also sent me 4 yogis, who were in the habit of visiting the footmark every year. With these went 4 Brahmins and 10 of the king's companions, with 15 men carrying provisions. As to water, there is plenty of it to be found on the road. We then proceeded on our journey, and on the first day crossed a river in a boat made of reeds, and entered the city of Manar Mandali, which is handsome and situated at the extremity of the territory of the infidel king, who had entertained and sent us out. We then proceeded to the port of Salawat, which is a small town. The roads, however, over which we travelled were rough and abounding with water. In these there were many elephants, but they never touched either pilgrims or strangers, in consequence of the blessing obtained by the Sheikh Abu Abd Allah ibn Khafif, the first who opened this road of pilgrimage to the foot. The infidels would not formally allow the Mohammedans to make this pilgrimage, but injured them, nor would they either sell or give them anything to eat. But when it happened that the elephants killed all the companions of this sheikh, one of them sparing and carrying him on his back from among the mountains to an inhabited district, the infidels ever after thought highly of the Mohammedans, admitted them into their houses and fed them. To this very day they still speak of the sheikh in the most extravagant terms of respect, and call him the greatest sheikh. After this we arrived at the city of Kankar, which is the seat of the emperor of Ceylon. It is built in a valley between 2 hills, upon an estuary called the Estuary of Rubies, and in which rubies are found. Without the city is the mosque of the Sheikh Othman of Shiraz, which both the emperor and the people of the city visit, and for which they have great respect. The emperor is an infidel and is known by the name Kinar. He has a white elephant upon which he rides on feast days, having first placed on his head some very large rubies. This is the only white elephant I had ever seen. The ruby and carbuncle are found only in this country. These are not allowed to be exported on account of the great estimation in which they are held, nor are they elsewhere dug up, but the ruby is found all over Ceylon. It is considered as property and is sold by the inhabitants. When they dig for the ruby, they find a white stone abounding with fissures. Within this the ruby is placed. They cut it out and give it to the polishers, who polish it until only the ruby is separated from the stone. Of this there is the red, the yellow, and the cerulean. They call it the manikam. It is a custom among them that every ruby amounting in value to 6 of the gold dinars current in those parts shall go to the emperor, who gives its value and takes it. What falls short of this goes to his attendants. All the women in the island of Ceylon have traces of coloured rubies, which they put upon their hands and legs as chains, in the place of bracelets and ankle rings. I once saw upon the head of the white elephant 7 rubies, each of which was larger than a hen's egg. I also saw in the possession of the king Ayari Shakarti a saucer made of ruby as large as the palm of the hand, in which he kept oils of aloes. I was much surprised at it when the king said to me, "We have them much larger than this." We then proceeded to Kankar and came to a cave known by the name of Ista Mahmud, then to the estuary of Batuta, which in their language signifies monkeys, animals which are in great numbers in the mountains of these parts. The monkeys are black and have long tails. The beard of the males is like that of a man. I was told by the Sheikh Othman and his son, 2 pious and credible persons, that the monkeys have a leader whom they follow as if he were their king. About his head is tied a turban composed of the leaves of trees, and he reclines upon a staff. At his right and left hand are 4 monkeys with rods in their hands, all of which stand at his head whenever the leading monkey sits. His wives and children are daily brought in on these occasions. Then comes a number of monkeys which sit and form a sort of assembly about him. One of the 4 monkeys then addresses him, and they disperse. After this, each of them comes with a nut, a lemon, or some of the mountain fruit, which he throws down before the leader. He then eats, together with his wives, children, and the 4 principal monkeys. They then all disperse. One of the yogis also told me that he once saw the 4 monkeys standing in the presence of the leader and beating another monkey with rods. After this they plucked off all his hair. I was also told by respectable persons that if one of these monkeys happens to attack and be too strong for a young woman, he will ravish her. We then proceeded to the estuary of reeds, where rubies are also found. The next place we arrived at is known by the House of the Old Woman, which is the farthest inhabited part of the island of Ceylon. Our next stage was the cave of Baba Tahir, who was one of the pious. The next, the cave of Sibak, an infidel king who retired to this place for the purposes of devotion. Here we saw the fierce leech, which they call the Zalal. It remains in trees or in the grass near water. When anyone comes near to it, it springs upon him, and the part of the body attacked will bleed profusely. People generally provide themselves with a lemon for this occasion, which they squeeze over him, and then he drops off. The place upon which the leech has fastened they cut out with a wooden knife made for that purpose. It is told of a pilgrim who passed by this place, that a leech fastened upon him, so that the skin swelled, and as he did not squeeze the lemon on him, the blood flowed out and he died. We next came to a place called the Seven Caves, and after this to the Ridge of Alexander, in which is a cave and a well of water. At this place is the entrance to the mountain. This mountain of Serendib is one of the highest in the world. We saw it from the sea at a distance of 9 days. When we ascended it, we saw the clouds passing between us and its foot. On it is a great number of trees, the leaves of which never fall. There are also flowers of various colours, with the red rose about the size of the palm of the hand, upon the leaves of which they think they can read the name of God and of his prophet. There are 2 roads on the mountain leading to the foot of Adam. The one is known by the way of Baba, the other by the way of Mama, by which they mean Adam and Eve. The way called that of Mama is easy. To it the travellers come upon their first visiting place, but everyone who has travelled only upon this is considered as if he had not made the pilgrimage at all. The way named Baba is rough and difficult of ascent. At the foot of the mountain where the entrance is, there is a minaret named after Alexander, and a fountain of water. The ancients have cut something like steps upon which one may ascend, and have fixed in iron pins to which chains are appended, and upon these those who ascend take hold. Of these chains there are 10 in number, the last of which is termed the chain of witness, because when one has arrived at this and looks down, the frightful notion seizes him that he shall fall. After the 10th chain is the cave of Khizr, in which there is a large space, and at the entrance a well of water full of fish, which is also called after his name. Of those, however, no one takes any. Near this, and on each side of the path, is a cistern cut in the rock. In this cave of Khizr, the pilgrims leave their provisions and whatever else they have, and then ascend about 2 miles to the top of the mountain, to the place of Adam's foot. The holy footmark is in a stone, so that its place is depressed. The length of the impression is 11 spans. The Chinese came here at some former time, and cut out from this stone the temple in the city of Zaitun, and pilgrimages are made to it from the most distant parts of China. In the rock, too, in which the impression of the foot is, there are 9 excavations which have been cut out. Into these the infidel pilgrims put gold, rubies, and other jewels, and hence you will see the fakirs, who have come as pilgrims to the well of Khizr, racing to get first to the excavations, in order to obtain what may be in them. We, however, found nothing but a little gold with some rubies, which we gave to our guide. It is customary for the pilgrims to remain in the cave of Khizr for 3 days, and during this time to visit the foot both morning and evening. This we did, and when the 3 days were expired we returned by the path of Mama, and came down to the cave of Shisham, who is Sheth, the son of Adam. After this we arrived at the fish port, and then at the village of Karkun, then at the village of Dildanu, then at the village of At Kalanja, where the tomb of Abu Abd Allah ibn Khafif is situated. All these villages and tilled lands are upon the mountain. At its foot and near the path is a cypress, which is large and never drops the leaf. But as to its leaves, there is no getting to them by any means, and these people's heads are turned with some strange and false notions respecting them. I saw a number of yogis about the tree, waiting for the falling of one, for they suppose that any person eating one of them will grow young again, however old he may be. Beneath this mountain is the great estuary at where the rubies are obtained. Its water appears wonderfully blue to the eye. From this place we proceeded, and in 2 days arrived at the city of Dinar, which is large and inhabited by merchants. In this is an idol, known by the same name, placed in a large temple, and in which there are about 1,000 Brahmins and yogis, and 500 young women, daughters of the nobility of India, who sing and dance all night before the image. The officers of the city revenue attend upon it, and as large as a man. In the place of eyes it has 2 large rubies, which, as I was told, shine in the night time like 2 lighted candles. From this place we travelled to Kali, which is a large town, then to Colombo, which is the finest and largest city in Serendib. After 3 days we arrived at the city of Batala, from which we had been sent by its king with his servants to visit Adam's Foot. This we entered and were received honourably by the king, who furnished us with provisions. End of chapter 20. Recording by Lewis Fletcher.